Flooding remains one of the most persistent threats to commercial and institutional facilities. From water intrusion at ground level to overwhelmed stormwater systems, even a single event can cause lasting structural and operational damage.
If there's flooding that comes from waterways, so obviously, if you're at all close to any kind of waterway, rivers, especially creeks, even little ditches that are going to carry drainage. They might be dry most of the year, but drainage ditches, anything that's going to collect water. I think people sometimes underestimate the capacity of waterways, including ephemeral waterways, to rise really rapidly during a rain event. And then the other type of flooding that we often encounter is actually it's called pluvial flooding. So it's not associated with rain, but not with a water body, right? So that's something that's going to be water that's concentrated by the landscape, and it's often associated with the stormwater management system.
Beatty says that understanding your facility and how water naturally moves across or beneath it is essential for facility managers. Even subtle differences in topography can determine whether water flows toward or away from a building.
So one thing you want to look at is topography. So if the property is below street grade, if it's at kind of a local low point, even if it's at a point where the slope of if you're in a hilly area, if you go from a steep slope to a flat or shallow slope, that's a place where water tends to build up, whether it's flowing above the ground or whether it's flowing inside the storm sewers. That's a place where water is going to suddenly slow down, and instead of becoming shallow and fast, which is called supercritical flow, it'll transition to subcritical flow, which is slower moving and deep. And those are the spots where flooding occurs. So yeah, looking at the larger surroundings, and then once you've identified if you're in an area that's going to be prone to flooding, look at the property itself, and you just really want to look at the grades. If the building is low relative to the surrounding landscape, that's going to mean that water is going to flow towards the building. And those are going to be the situations where you really want to look at other protection and mitigation measures.
During or after an event, documenting how and where floodwater travels can make all the difference, not just for cleanup, but for understanding how the next event might unfold.
Another thing that people often overlook is the peak water lines. And sometimes you'll have multiple water levels on a wall when a flood event has occurred, and you really want to not wash those off. You got to take a photo because and measure it. You gain a ton of information because different depths, if you match them up with other things, they will tell you, when that level was attained, and they can help you identify where the water came from and what kind of the restricting feature might be that's not allowing the water to flow through and escape. If you're suffering from a flood that came from a municipal, stormwater or wastewater system, if you could document the peak depths flood depths that occur and the timing, that can be lined up with data that you can receive through a public records request if you want, and that can lend a lot of valuable insights.
Reviewing security footage and using timestamps can even help align water levels with rainfall data, providing insights into how fast systems became overwhelmed. That data can be used to help prevent future flooding issues.
If you know where the water is coming from, you're gonna, you need to know that before you figure out how to mitigate it. I mean, maybe it's coming through a leak in your roof. You have water, ponding on the floor somewhere. Well, if it happened to come through a leak in the roof and migrated through your wallways or directly drip down, that's going to be a very different mitigation response than if the water, say, flowed in from the street, and your response there, rather than patching your roof, is going to be, install flood barriers next time, sandbags or other flood barriers you can buy if the water's coming in through, a backflow.
For facilities in flood-prone areas, managers who take proactive steps can reduce the risks of flooding before disaster strikes.
I mean, with new construction, just elevate it if possible. I mean, if your building is high enough relative to the surrounding grounds, you're not going to get flooded except during the more extreme events, right? That's going to be the difference between getting having a flood occur, once every 5, 10, 20 years versus like every winter. So elevation is really important.
Beatty says that knowing how the broader municipal drainage system performs is also vital. If nearby inlets or catch basins aren't draining, managers should report it, since small blockages during minor storms can lead to major flooding later. From understanding flood pathways to documenting damage, facility managers play a crucial role in keeping operations resilient. Awareness, preparation, and documentation are key steps to keeping water where it belongs, outside the building.